The stemware caught the candlelight as I balanced the tray against my hip, weaving through the Friday night crowd at Celestino. 5 months of working here had taught me to navigate the narrow spaces between tables without disturbing the expensive conversations happening around me. The restaurant hummed with the kind of energy that came from people who had money to burn and nowhere else they needed to be. I set down the wine glasses at table 12, murmured something polite about their entrees arriving shortly, and turned back toward the kitchen. That was when Jessica caught my arm, her grip urgent enough to make me pause mid-step. "He's here again," she whispered, her dark eyes darting toward the private section near the back. "Third time this week. Fourth, if you count last Friday." I didn't need to ask who. For the past 2 months, the man in the corner booth had become as much a fixture of my Friday nights as the ache in my lower back and the smell of garlic that clung to my uniform. Alessandro something. I'd never caught his last name, but I'd caught him watching me more times than I could count. So, I adjusted the empty tray, keeping my voice level. "He tips well and doesn't complain. That's more than I can say for half the people here." Jessica's mouth curved into a knowing smirk. "Girl, he's not looking at you like a customer looks at a waitress. He's looking at you like nothing." I cut her off, already moving toward the kitchen. "Don't start with that. I'm not interested." The truth was more complicated than that. But I wasn't about to explain to Jessica why the weight of any man's attention made my skin crawl these days. 6 months since I'd fled my apartment in the middle of the night with nothing but a backpack and bruises hidden beneath my clothes. 6 months since Ryan. A month of couch surfing and panic attacks before I'd landed this job, this tiny studio apartment in a neighborhood that made my mother's warnings about New York seem quaint. I pushed through the swinging doors into controlled chaos. Marco, the head chef, was shouting in rapid Italian at one of the line cooks. Steam rose from pots that bubbled with sauces I could smell but never afford to taste. This was my world now. Small, contained, survivable. "Table 7 needs fresh bread," Marco called out when he saw me. "And VIP section wants you specifically. Table 16. My stomach dropped. Table 16. The corner booth. Him. "Can't Jessica take it? I've got 4 other tables." "He asked for you." Marco's tone left no room for argument. "Don't keep the man waiting, Cooper. He's important." I grabbed the breadbasket with hands that wanted to shake and forced them to steadiness. Important. Everyone at Celestino was important, at least in their own minds. The difference was that when Alessandro walked in, the entire staff stood straighter. Even Marco, who treated politicians and celebrities with equal disdain, showed deference to the man in the corner booth. The walk across the dining room felt longer than it should have. I kept my eyes on the breadbasket, on the crisp white tablecloth, on anything except the dark eyes I could feel tracking my approach. "Your bread, sir." I set the basket down with practiced efficiency, already turning to leave. "Wait." The single word froze me in place. His voice was quiet, almost gentle, but it carried weight. I turned back slowly, finally meeting his gaze. He was striking in a way that didn't photograph well, but commanded attention in person. Dark hair swept back from a face all sharp angles and shadows, with eyes so deep brown they appeared black in the candlelight. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than 3 months of my rent, but he wore it like he'd forgotten he had it on. "Yes, sir? You've been working here 5 months." It wasn't a question, but I nodded anyway. "You're good at what you do. Efficient. Observant. You notice when someone's glass is empty before they realize it themselves." The compliment caught me off guard. Customers didn't notice things like that. They didn't notice me at all, which was exactly how I preferred it. "Thank you, sir. Is there something you need?" "Your name." "Haley." The word came out automatically before I could stop it, before I could remember that giving him even that small piece of myself felt dangerous. "Haley." He repeated it like he was testing how it felt. "I'm Alessandro Ferraro." The name meant nothing to me, but something in the way he said it suggested it should. I waited, uncertain what response he expected. Before either of us could speak again, the front door opened with more force than necessary. Cold November air rushed in, carrying with it a laugh I recognized with the kind of visceral dread that lived in my bones. Ryan. He stood in the entrance with a woman I didn't recognize draped on his arm. Blonde. Tall. Everything I wasn't. His eyes scanned the restaurant with predatory intent, and when they landed on me, his face split into a smile that made my blood run cold. "Cooper, what are you—" Jessica appeared at my elbow, then saw Ryan and went silent. "I need to go," I managed to say, but my feet wouldn't move. 6 months of running, of hiding, of building this careful new life, and he'd found me anyway. Ryan was walking toward me now, his companion forgotten. The restaurant noise faded to white static. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except watch him close the distance between us. "Haley, there you are." His voice carried across the dining room, pitched to draw attention. "I've been worried sick. You just disappeared, babe." Didn't return any of my calls. The lie was so smooth, so practiced. In his version of events, I was the unstable one. The one who'd run away for no reason, who needed to be brought back, who belonged to him. "I don't know you," I said, but the words came out weak, unconvincing even to my own ears. "Don't be like that." Ryan reached for my arm, and I flinched back so hard I stumbled. Jessica caught me, her hand steady on my shoulder. "Sir, if you don't have a reservation—" Marco had materialized from the kitchen, his chef's white still dusted with flour. "I'm just trying to talk to my girlfriend," Ryan said, all wounded innocence. "She's been having some troubles lately. Mental health issues. I'm sure you understand." The words hit like physical blows. This was his pattern, his method. Discredit me first. Make everyone see me as the problem, as someone who couldn't be trusted to know her own mind. "She's not your anything." Alessandro's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He hadn't raised his volume, but somehow everyone in the vicinity fell silent. "And you need to leave." Ryan's attention snapped to Alessandro, dismissal already forming on his face. Then something shifted in his expression. Recognition, or maybe just survival instinct. Whatever he saw in Alessandro made him take an involuntary step backward. "This is a private matter," Ryan tried, but the confidence had drained from his voice. "Nothing that happens in my establishment is private." Alessandro stood, and I realized for the first time how tall he was, how solid, how utterly unmovable he appeared. "You're disturbing my guests and harassing my staff. Leave now, or I'll have you removed." "Your establishment?" Ryan laughed, but it sounded hollow. "Since when do waitresses have—" "I finalized the purchase this afternoon." Alessandro's words were precise, controlled. "I own Celestino as of 4 o'clock this afternoon, which means I make the rules here, and my first rule is that you're no longer welcome." The revelation rippled through the staff. Marco's eyebrows rose toward his hairline. Jessica's grip on my shoulder tightened. I stood frozen, trying to process what I was hearing. Alessandro moved past me, placing himself between Ryan and me with deliberate physicality. "I'm going to walk you to the door now. You won't return. You won't contact Haley. You won't come within 2 blocks of this building. Are we clear?" Ryan's jaw worked as he calculated his options. His date had already disappeared, probably embarrassed by the scene. The other diners watched with the kind of fascinated horror people reserve for car accidents. "Crystal," Ryan finally spat. He turned his glare on me. "You always did need someone to fight your battles, didn't you?" Pathetic. The insult barely registered. I was too busy watching Alessandro guide Ryan toward the exit with a hand that never quite touched him, but somehow communicated absolute authority. The door closed behind them, and the restaurant exploded into whispered conversations. "Girl," Jessica's voice was awed. "What just happened?" I had no idea. Alessandro returned moments later, his expression unreadable. He walked directly to me, and every instinct I had screamed to run, to hide, to make myself small and invisible again. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. I nodded because I didn't trust my voice. "That man will not trouble you again. You have my word." He glanced at Marco, who still hovered nearby. "Haley should take the rest of the evening off. Paid, obviously. She's had a shock." "I don't need—" I started, but Alessandro held up a hand. "Please." The single word carried neither command nor plea, just a simple request. "Let me do this much." Marco was already nodding, making shooing motions toward the back. Jessica took my arm, guiding me toward the staff room. I went numbly, my mind struggling to catch up with everything that had just happened. I changed out of my uniform in a daze. When I emerged, the restaurant had returned to its normal rhythm, as if the confrontation had been nothing more than a brief interruption. Only Alessandro remained in the hallway, leaning against the wall with his hands in his pockets. "I'll have my driver take you home," he said. "That's not necessary." The words came out sharper than I intended. "I can take the subway. It's nearly 11. The subway isn't safe at this hour. I do it every night." Something flickered across his face. "That ends tonight." The presumption in his voice sparked anger through the numbness. "You don't get to make that decision." "You're right." He straightened, pulling something from his pocket. A business card, heavy cream stock with just a phone number embossed in black. "But I hope you'll accept this, at least. If you need anything at all." I took the card because refusing seemed more difficult than accepting. Our fingers brushed in the exchange, and I jerked my hand back like I'd been burned. If he noticed my reaction, he didn't comment. "The offer of a ride stands. My driver is waiting outside. I'm fine walking." I clutched my bag against my chest like a shield. "But thank you for earlier with Ryan. You don't need to thank me for basic human decency, Haley." The way he said my name, careful and deliberate, made something warm and terrifying unfurl in my chest. I shoved it down ruthlessly. "Good night, Mr. Ferraro." "Alessandro," he corrected gently. "And good night." I left through the back entrance, my heart hammering against my ribs. The November air bit through my thin jacket as I hurried toward the subway entrance 3 blocks away. I made it half a block before I realized a black car was crawling along the curb behind me, maintaining a careful distance. His driver, following me home whether I'd agreed or not. I should have been angry, should have been terrified by the presumption, by yet another man deciding what was best for me without asking. Instead, as I descended into the subway station and the car finally drove away, all I felt was a confusing mixture of relief and something dangerously close to gratitude. I pulled the business card from my pocket as the train rattled through the tunnel. Just a phone number. No name, no company. Just a lifeline I hadn't asked for but couldn't quite bring myself to throw away. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray light that made Manhattan look washed out and tired. I showed up for my shift at Celestino 15 minutes early, as always, expecting the usual routine of prep work and coffee strong enough to strip paint. What I didn't expect was Marco pulling me aside before I'd even clocked in. "Cooper, we need to talk." He gestured toward his cramped office behind the kitchen, his expression unreadable. My stomach dropped. This was it. Alessandro had reconsidered whatever impulse had made him defend me Friday night, and now I was losing the one stable thing in my carefully reconstructed life. I followed Marco into the office, my mind already calculating how many shifts I could afford to miss before my landlord started the eviction process. The answer was 0. "There's been a change in your employment status," Marco said, settling into his chair. He pulled out a folder, flipped it open. "Effective immediately. You're being promoted to assistant manager. Salary is here." He slid a paper across the desk. I stared at the number. Read it 3 times to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. It was triple what I'd been making. Triple. I don't understand. Owner's orders. Marco's mouth quirked. "Apparently you made an impression." The warmth that had flooded through me at seeing the salary curdled into something cold and sharp. "I didn't ask for this. Most people don't turn down a promotion, Cooper. Most people weren't offered one by a man who knows nothing about their work." I stood abruptly, the chair scraping against linoleum. "Where is he?" Marco checked his watch. "Probably won't be in until lunch service." "Look, I don't know what happened Friday night, but whatever it was, take the win. You're good at what you do. You deserve this." Did I? Or was this just another version of the same pattern I'd sworn to escape? A powerful man deciding what I needed, what I deserved, without bothering to ask what I wanted. I left Marco's office and found Jessica already at work setting up the dining room. She took one look at my face and raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. You heard about the promotion." "You knew?" "Marco told me first thing." "Girl, this is amazing. Do you know what assistant manager makes here? You could actually afford to live in a building with working heat. I don't want it." Jessica set down the stack of menus she'd been carrying. "Okay, I'm going to need you to explain that logic. Because from where I'm standing, you just won the lottery, and you're complaining about the ticket. He didn't ask me. The words burst out sharper than I'd intended. He just decided. Like he has any right to make choices about my life. Understanding dawned in Jessica's eyes. This is about Ryan. This is about me not being some charity case for another controlling man to fix. Haley, Jessica's voice gentled. I've been working here 3 years. I've seen Alessandro Ferraro exactly 6 times before 2 months ago. You know what he did for the last assistant manager when she asked for a raise? He said no. You know what he does for most staff? The bare minimum required by law. She paused. He bought this entire restaurant. Do you understand how much money that is? And the first thing he does is promote you. Exactly. Don't you think that's weird? I think it's a man who sees something he wants and goes after it. Jessica picked up her menus again. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I spent the morning shift in a haze of resentment and confusion, my movements automatic as I took orders and delivered food. The lunch rush started at 11:30, and right on schedule, Alessandro walked through the door. He looked different in daylight, less intimidating, almost approachable in dark slacks and a gray sweater that probably cost more than my monthly rent but looked comfortable. He scanned the dining room, found me immediately, and made his way to his usual table. I let him wait. Served 3 other tables first, refilled water glasses, checked on dessert orders. When I finally approached his table, my jaw was set and my resolve firm. We need to talk, I said without preamble. He glanced up from the menu he'd been pretending to read. Then talk. Not here. Marco's office. 5 minutes. I didn't wait for his response, just turned and walked away. My hands were shaking by the time I reached the kitchen, but I kept them steady through sheer force of will. Jessica caught my eye and gave me a thumbs up. Marco looked vaguely concerned but gestured for me to go ahead. Alessandro appeared exactly 5 minutes later, closing the office door behind him with a soft click. In the small space, he seemed larger than he had in the restaurant, his presence filling every corner. You're upset about the promotion, he said before I could speak. I'm upset that you made a decision about my life without asking me. I observed your work. You handle crises in the kitchen better than Marco does. You've talked down 3 separate drunk customers in the past month without security getting involved. You remember every regular's order and dietary restriction. You're wasted as a waitress. The compliments should have softened me, but they only stoked my anger higher. That's not the point. Then what is? You don't get to swoop in and fix things just because you have money and power. I'm not some project for you to improve. Something flashed in his eyes. Hurt, maybe, or anger. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm offering you a fair wage for your skill set. If that offends you, I can retract the offer. Good. The word came out sharp. Do that. We stared at each other across Marco's cluttered desk, the air between us crackling with tension. Alessandro's phone rang, breaking the moment. He silenced it without looking away from me. I apologize, he said finally, each word measured and controlled. I should have consulted you first. That was presumptuous. The apology caught me off guard. Men like Ryan never apologized, never admitted fault. I just need you to understand that I can't. I stopped, unsure how to explain the panic that lived under my skin whenever someone tried to take control. I need to make my own choices. Understood. He nodded once, crisp and businesslike. The offer remains open if you change your mind, but I won't push. Someone knocked on the door. One of the line cooks stuck his head in. Sorry to interrupt, but there's a delivery for Ms. Cooper. Guy says it's urgent. Alessandro and I emerged from the office to find a courier holding a large manila envelope. He checked his clipboard. Haley Cooper? That's me. The envelope was heavy, official. My name and the restaurant's address were printed on the front in sterile block letters. My hands felt numb as I tore it open. Legal documents spilled out. A restraining order. Against me. Filed by Ryan Mitchell. Claiming I'd been harassing him with obsessive phone calls and threatening messages. It was dated Friday night, hours after the incident at the restaurant. The world tilted sideways. I grabbed the counter to steady myself, the papers shaking in my grip. Every word was a lie. But they were official lies, stamped and signed by a judge. Ryan's father was a judge. He had connections, resources, the ability to make his version of reality legally binding. Let me see that. Alessandro's voice came from somewhere far away. He took the documents from my nerveless fingers, his eyes scanning the text with rapid precision. His expression hardened with each line he read. "This is fabricated," he said flatly. "I know that. You know that. But his father is Judge Mitchell. Do you know how much power that is?" My voice cracked. "I can't afford a lawyer. I can't fight this. He's going to destroy me, and there's nothing I can do about it." Alessandro pulled out his phone and walked a few steps away, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. I heard words I recognized. Lawyer, immediately, false accusation, mixed with ones I didn't. He spoke with the kind of authority that suggested the person on the other end had no choice but to comply. When he ended the call, he came back to me. "My attorney will have this dismissed by end of business today. You can't just watch me." He held up the restraining order. "Ryan Mitchell has made a critical error. He filed false legal documents. That's a crime. And his father's position won't protect him from serious criminal charges if I choose to pursue them." "Why would you do this?" The question burst out of me. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. Because it's wrong." He said it simply, as if that explained everything. Because men like him rely on their victims being too afraid or too poor to fight back. And because you deserve better than to be terrorized by someone you had the courage to leave. My throat tightened with unshed tears. I refused to cry in front of him, in front of anyone. Tears were weakness, and I'd learned the hard way that weakness only invited more pain. Alessandro's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then back at me. "My attorney needs some information from you. It won't take long." He paused. "May I add my number to your phone? As an emergency contact?" The request was so simple, so reasonable, but it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff, about to step off into empty air. "This doesn't make us—" I stopped, not sure how to finish the sentence. "Friends? Allies? Something more dangerous? It makes you someone I can help if you need it," Alessandro said quietly. "Nothing more, nothing less." I handed him my phone with trembling fingers. He typed in his number, saved it under just his first name, and returned the phone to me. His hand brushed mine in the exchange, warm and solid and real. "The restraining order will be withdrawn by 5 o'clock, he said. "Ryan will not file another one. You have my word." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I'm going to make it very clear to him that pursuing this further would be catastrophically stupid." The temperature in his voice dropped several degrees. "I have information about his business dealings that would interest several federal agencies. He'll make the smart choice." The casual way he said it should have terrified me. This was a man who collected information like weapons, who could destroy someone's life with a phone call. Instead, I felt nothing but bone-deep relief. "Thank you," I whispered. Alessandro's expression softened fractionally. "Go take your lunch break. You've had a shock. When you come back, we can discuss the promotion like rational adults, if you're willing." I nodded, not trusting my voice. Jessica materialized at my elbow as Alessandro walked away, guiding me toward the staff room with gentle efficiency. "Okay, spill," she said once we were alone. "What just happened?" "I don't know." I sank onto the battered couch, my legs finally giving out. "He's going to make the restraining order disappear. Just like that. Like it's nothing." Jessica sat beside me, her expression uncharacteristically serious. "Haley, I need you to listen to me. Alessandro Ferraro isn't just some rich guy who owns restaurants. People are scared of him. Important people. You saw how Marco acted Friday night. What are you saying?" "I'm saying be careful. He's interested in you. That much is obvious. But men like him don't do anything without expecting something in return." Her words echoed my own fears, but they rang hollow against the memory of Alessandro's controlled fury when he'd read that restraining order. Against the gentle way he'd asked permission before adding his number to my phone. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Restraining order withdrawn. Judge Mitchell has been formally walled off from anything involving you going forward. Ryan has been strongly encouraged to relocate out of state. You're safe now. A." I showed the message to Jessica. Her eyebrows rose toward her hairline. "Girl," she said slowly, "that man just made a legal problem disappear in under 2 hours. On a Monday. Do you understand how much power that takes?" I did. And it terrified me almost as much as it reassured me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was from Ryan's number. Just 3 words. "You'll regret this." My blood turned to ice. Alessandro had been wrong. Ryan wasn't smart enough to back down, wasn't rational enough to recognize when he was outmatched. He would keep coming, keep trying to hurt me, until one of us was destroyed. I forwarded the message to Alessandro without letting myself overthink it. His response came immediately. "Noted. Forwarding to my attorney. This constitutes harassment. Ryan is building his own legal grave." Then another message. "You're safe, Haley. I meant what I said." Jessica read the exchange over my shoulder and whistled low. "Okay. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe he's one of the good ones. There are no good ones," I said automatically, the words worn smooth by repetition. "Just ones who hide it better. Or maybe," Jessica said gently, "you're so used to men like Ryan that you can't recognize when someone actually gives a damn about you." I didn't have an answer for that. 2 weeks slipped by in a rhythm I hadn't expected to find comforting. Alessandro came to Celestino 4 times each week, always requesting a table in my section, always ordering the same dishes, always leaving before the restaurant closed. We spoke in careful pleasantries about the weather, the menu, nothing that ventured into personal territory. Jessica said it was the most restrained courtship she'd ever witnessed. I refused to call it courtship at all. The promotion sat between us like unexploded ordnance. I hadn't accepted it, but I hadn't formally declined either. Alessandro seemed content to let the question hang unanswered, which only made me more suspicious of his motives. Ryan had gone quiet. No messages, no surprise appearances, nothing. The restraining order had vanished from public record, as if it had never existed. Alessandro's attorney had sent me a brief email confirming everything was resolved, with a phone number to call if I needed anything else. I'd saved the number and tried not to think about how much that legal work must have cost. Friday night found me closing down my section, my lower back aching from 8 straight hours on my feet. Jessica had left an hour earlier, and most of the kitchen staff was finishing cleanup. I walked home through streets that had become familiar, my keys threaded between my fingers out of habit rather than genuine fear. The November cold had teeth tonight, biting through my jacket and making my breath fog in the streetlight. I climbed the 4 flights to my apartment, already mentally cataloging what I had in the fridge that could pass for dinner. Probably nothing. Maybe I'd just go straight to bed. My door was unlocked. I stopped on the landing, staring at the handle that sat slightly ajar. I never left it unlocked. Never. My hand moved to my pocket, fingers closing around my phone. But I didn't pull it out yet. Maybe I'd forgotten this morning. Maybe I was so tired that I'd walked out without checking. I pushed the door open slowly. The apartment was destroyed. Drawers pulled out and emptied onto the floor, couch cushions slashed, books swept from their shelf, my few possessions scattered like debris from an explosion. And in the center of it all, sitting in my one kitchen chair with his arms crossed, was Ryan. "Hello, babe." His voice was pleasant, conversational. "We need to talk." Every muscle in my body locked. Fight or flight screamed through my nervous system, but I couldn't do either. I could only stand frozen in the doorway, keys cutting into my palm. "How did you get in here?" "I didn't need a key to get in, Haley. You never were very observant." He stood, and I took an involuntary step backward. "You've made my life very difficult, Haley. I think you owe me an apology. Get out." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Get out, or I'm calling the police." "Are you?" Ryan moved closer, backing me into the hallway. "Because I've been thinking about that restraining order. The one your new boyfriend made disappear. That was illegal, you know. I could press charges. Against you, against him. Imagine what the police would think when they heard you've been sleeping with a criminal to get favors. I haven't been sleeping with anyone. Doesn't matter what's true. Matters what people believe." His hand shot out, faster than I could dodge, and grabbed my upper arm with bruising force. "You humiliated me, in front of everyone. You think you can just walk away from me and start a new life? You think some restaurant owner is going to protect you? Pain radiated from where his fingers dug into my arm. I twisted, trying to break free, but his grip only tightened. With my free hand, I managed to unlock my phone screen, fingers shaking as I pulled up Alessandro's contact and hit the location share button. It took 3 tries, my hands trembling too badly to be precise. "Let go of me," I said through gritted teeth. "Not until you understand. You belong to me, Haley. You always have, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Your boss, your coworkers, everyone who thinks you're some innocent victim." His face was inches from mine now, breath hot and sour. "I'm going to destroy that pretty little story you've built." The phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Alessandro. "On my way. 12 minutes. 12 minutes. I just needed to survive 12 minutes. "You're scared," Ryan observed with satisfaction. "Good. You should be. Do you know what I've been through because of you? The lawyers, the threats, having to explain to my father why his name was attached to a failed restraining order? You've made me look weak. You are weak." The words escaped before I could stop them. "You've always been weak. That's why you need to control me. Because without someone to push around, you're nothing." His hand moved from my arm to my throat in one fluid motion. Not squeezing. Not yet. Just resting there with implicit threat. "Say that again." I couldn't speak. Could barely breathe. But I met his eyes with every ounce of defiance I could summon. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made Ryan's head snap toward the stairwell. Heavy footsteps. Purposeful. Multiple sets. His grip on my throat loosened fractionally. Alessandro appeared first, taking in the scene with a single sweeping glance. Behind him came 2 other men. One was tall and broad-shouldered, with a broken nose that suggested violence was a familiar language. The other was leaner, watchful, with hands that stayed near his jacket pockets. "Step away from her." Alessandro's voice was absolutely calm, which somehow made it more terrifying than if he'd shouted. "Right now." Ryan's hand fell away from my throat. He manufactured a smile, the kind that used to charm my friends and confuse my family. "This is just a misunderstanding. Haley and I were having a discussion. Couples stuff, you know how it is. We're not a couple," I managed to say, my voice rough. "We haven't been for 6 months." Alessandro moved closer, placing himself between Ryan and me with deliberate physicality. "Did he hurt you?" I wanted to say no, to minimize it, to make this whole situation disappear, but Alessandro was looking at my arm, at the place where Ryan's fingers had left red marks that were already darkening to bruises. Something in his expression shifted. The careful control slipped for just a moment, and what showed beneath was cold and absolutely merciless. "Michael," he said without taking his eyes off Ryan, "remove our guest from the building. Make sure he understands that returning to this address would be inadvisable." The broad-shouldered man moved with surprising grace. He didn't touch Ryan, just positioned himself in a way that made retreat the only logical option. Ryan looked between them, calculations running behind his eyes. "This isn't over," he said to me. "Yes," Alessandro said quietly. "It is. If you contact Ms. Cooper again, if you come near her workplace or her home, if you so much as think about her too loudly, you'll discover exactly how unpleasant I can make your life. Am I being clear? You're threatening me in front of witnesses. I'm making you a promise. There's a difference." Alessandro's tone never changed, never rose, never wavered from that deadly calm. "Michael will escort you out now. The next time you need escorting, it won't be nearly so polite." Ryan looked at me one last time, something like hatred burning in his eyes, then let himself be guided toward the stairs. The lean man followed, and their footsteps echoed down the stairwell until the building's front door slammed shut. Only then did Alessandro turn to me. "Are you hurt anywhere else?" I shook my head, not trusting my voice. Now that the immediate danger had passed, my legs felt unsteady. I leaned against the wall, trying to keep myself upright through sheer determination. Alessandro surveyed the destroyed apartment, his jaw tightening. He didn't have a key. "I didn't give him one," I said, staring at the damage. "I never would." The admission felt like failure. "The lock is broken." Alessandro crouched by the door, examining the mechanism. He damaged it, forcing his way in. This door won't lock properly tonight. Alessandro's thumb moved over his phone. Michael is calling the police and the building manager, he said, voice clipped with control. There will be a report. Photos. A paper trail. His gaze lifted to mine. He doesn't get to do this and vanish into the dark. I'll wedge a chair under the handle. I've done it before. He stood, brushing off his hands. You're not staying here. I don't have anywhere else to go. There's a hotel 3 blocks from Celestino, the Meridian. I'll take you there tonight. Tomorrow we can discuss a more permanent solution. The presumption in his voice sparked anger through my shock. You can't just decide that. I can, and I am. He pulled out his phone. You're in shock. Your apartment is compromised, and your ex-boyfriend just demonstrated that he has no regard for your safety. Those are facts. The logical response is to remove you from this location immediately. I can't afford a hotel. The words came out sharp, humiliating. I can barely afford this place. Alessandro didn't even pause. I'm paying for it. No. I pushed off from the wall, anger giving me strength. I don't want your charity. I don't want to owe you anything. Something flashed across his face. Frustration, maybe, or hurt. This isn't charity. This is basic human decency. You're not safe here. Let me help you. Why? The question burst out of me. Why do you care? You barely know me. Because Ryan was right about one thing. Alessandro's voice dropped lower. I am going to protect you. Not because you're weak. Not because I want to control you. But because I can, and he can't, and someone should. We stared at each other across my ruined apartment. I could feel my resistance crumbling, worn down by fear and exhaustion, and the simple fact that he was right. I wasn't safe here. One night, I said finally. Just tonight. Tomorrow I'll figure something else out. Alessandro nodded. One night. I'll help you pack what you need. He moved through my apartment with efficient purpose, finding my backpack amid the destruction and beginning to gather clothes. I watched numbly as he folded my things with unexpected care, selecting practical items without asking for guidance. A change of clothes, toiletries from the bathroom, the book I kept on my nightstand. Ready? He asked when the bag was full. I took one last look at the apartment. It had never been much, but it had been mine. My first place after escaping Ryan. My first taste of real independence. Seeing it destroyed felt like watching a piece of my hard-won freedom crumble. Yes, I whispered. The drive to the hotel passed in silence. Alessandro's car was warm and quiet, insulated from the city noise. I pressed my forehead against the cool window and tried not to think about how much my arm hurt where Ryan had grabbed me. The Meridian was the kind of hotel I'd walked past 100 times without ever imagining I'd stay there. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, staff in uniforms that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. Alessandro guided me through the lobby with a hand at the small of my back, speaking quietly to the front desk clerk. The suite is ready, Mr. Ferraro, the clerk said, handing over a key card. Is there anything else you require? Privacy, Alessandro said simply. The suite was on the 12th floor, all clean lines and muted colors, with a view of the city that made Manhattan look almost beautiful. I stood in the doorway, unable to make myself walk inside. It felt like crossing a threshold I couldn't uncross. Haley, Alessandro's voice was gentle. You're safe here. No one knows you're in this building except me and the front desk, and they won't tell anyone. The door locks. The room is paid for. You can rest. Thank you. The words came out barely audible. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't... Don't. He held up a hand. You don't need to thank me for doing what should be done. Get some sleep. We'll talk in the morning about next steps. He turned to leave, and something in me panicked at the thought of being alone with my thoughts, with the memory of Ryan's hand on my throat. Alessandro. He stopped, looked back. Thank you anyway, even if you think I shouldn't say it. His expression softened in a way I'd never seen before. Good night, Haley. Lock the door behind me. I did, the deadbolt sliding home with a solid click that made me feel fractionally safer. Then I stood in the middle of the beautiful suite and finally let myself fall apart. Morning light filtered through the hotel curtains in shades of gold that seemed too gentle for how I felt. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying Ryan's hand on my throat, the casual violence in his grip, the promise of worse to come. Sleep had come in fitful bursts around 4 a.m, leaving me groggy and disoriented when someone knocked on the suite door at 8. I checked the peephole before opening it. Alessandro stood in the hallway holding a cardboard tray with 2 coffee cups and a white paper bag that smelled like fresh pastries. Behind him stood an older woman in a tailored gray suit, her silver hair pulled back in a neat bun, carrying a leather briefcase. "Good morning," Alessandro said when I opened the door. "I brought breakfast. And my attorney. I hope that's acceptable." I must have looked as wrecked as I felt because his expression shifted to concern. "Did you sleep at all?" "Some." I stepped back to let them in, suddenly aware that I was still wearing yesterday's clothes, that my hair was a disaster, that I probably looked like exactly what I was, someone barely holding it together. The attorney extended her hand with a professional smile. "Caroline Webb. Mr. Ferraro briefed me on your situation. I'm sorry you're going through this." We settled around the suite's small dining table. Alessandro distributed coffee with the kind of efficiency that suggested he'd done this before, while Caroline pulled documents from her briefcase and arranged them in neat stacks. "I'll be direct," Caroline said, opening a folder. "Your ex-boyfriend filed a civil lawsuit against you yesterday afternoon. Defamation of character, claiming your allegations of abuse have damaged his professional reputation and personal relationships. He's seeking $200,000 in damages." The number hit me like a physical blow. 200,000. I didn't have $200 in my savings account. The coffee cup trembled in my hands. "He can't do that," I said, even though I knew he already had. "Everything I said about him is true. Truth is an absolute defense against defamation," Caroline agreed. "But defending yourself in court costs money. Legal fees for a case like this could easily run $50,000 or more. Ryan's banking on you not being able to afford representation, which would result in a default judgment in his favor. So he wins." My voice sounded hollow, even to my own ears. "He gets to destroy me, and there's nothing I can do about it." "That's not what I said." Caroline's tone was firm, but not unkind. "I'm willing to represent you pro bono. No charge for my services." I looked between her and Alessandro, trying to understand the catch. "Why would you do that?" "Because I don't like bullies," Caroline said simply. "And because Alessandro asked me to. We've worked together for 15 years. When he tells me someone needs help, I listen." Alessandro had been quiet during this exchange, his attention seemingly focused on his coffee, but I could feel him watching me, gauging my reactions. "There's more you should know," Caroline continued. "I did some preliminary investigation into Ryan Mitchell's background. He owes approximately $80,000 to various creditors, including some individuals who don't take kindly to missed payments. He has a pattern of behavior with former girlfriends. 2 separate women filed complaints about harassment and assault, but both cases were dismissed when the women suddenly declined to testify. Likely they were paid off or intimidated into silence. Each revelation made my stomach tighten. I'd known Ryan was cruel, but hearing it laid out in legal terms made it real in a way my own experiences hadn't. "He blames you for his current circumstances," Caroline said. "The loss of social standing, the financial pressure, probably other things that have nothing to do with you, but that he's decided to attribute to you anyway. Men like him need someone to blame for their failures. What do I do?" The question came out small, defeated. "First, you stop blaming yourself." Caroline's voice softened. "Second, you let me handle the legal aspects. Third, and this is important, you accept that you're not safe in your current living situation and make appropriate arrangements." I looked at Alessandro. "You told her about the apartment." "I told her you needed options," he corrected. "The offer stands. I own a property in Chelsea. There's a vacant unit on the 5th floor. It's yours for 6 months while we resolve this situation legally. Rent-free." I can't accept that. The refusal was automatic, trained into me by years of independence hard-won and fiercely guarded. "Why not?" Alessandro's question was genuine, not challenging. "Because I don't want to owe you. Because accepting help feels like giving up control. Because—" I stopped, unable to articulate the tangle of pride and fear and exhaustion that made the idea of being indebted to anyone unbearable. "Because you're used to men who help only when they want something in return," Caroline finished quietly. I understand that impulse, but sometimes accepting help is the strongest thing you can do. Alessandro set down his coffee cup with deliberate care. I'm not Ryan. I'm not going to hold this over you or use it as leverage. You need a safe place to live. I have one available. The math is simple. Nothing about this is simple. I stood, needing to move, to put distance between myself and their reasonable arguments. You're asking me to move into an apartment you own. Let your attorney represent me for free. Accept that you'll just fix all my problems because you've decided to. How is that different from Ryan deciding what I needed and making choices for me? Alessandro's jaw tightened, the first sign of frustration I'd seen from him. The difference is I'm asking, not telling. You can say no. You can walk out of this hotel right now. Go back to your broken apartment. Face Ryan alone with no resources and no protection. That's your choice to make, not mine. The bluntness of his words stung because they were true. I didn't have other options. I'd been running on pride and stubbornness for so long that I'd forgotten how to recognize genuine help when it was offered. I need time to think, I said finally. Of course. Caroline began gathering her documents. Take all the time you need. My contact information is in here. She handed me a folder. Call me when you're ready to discuss the lawsuit defense. Or don't. But know that the offer remains open. They left together, and I was alone again with my coffee going cold and my thoughts spiraling. The suite felt too large, too quiet, too much like a cage even though the door was unlocked and I could leave whenever I wanted. I spent the rest of Saturday in that hotel room, ordering room service I barely touched and avoiding the calls from Jessica that started around noon. By Sunday, I'd watched every movie the hotel offered and memorized the pattern of cracks in the ceiling. By Monday, I was climbing the walls with restless anxiety. Alessandro didn't call, didn't text, didn't show up with more coffee and reasonable arguments. His absence felt louder than his presence had. Tuesday morning, Jessica appeared at my door with a duffel bag and a determined expression. Marco told me where you were. I'm not leaving until we talk. I let her in because refusing seemed like more effort than I could muster. She took one look at the room service trays scattered across the coffee table and made a disapproving sound. Girl, you look terrible. Thanks. That's helpful. You know what I mean. She sat on the couch, patted the cushion beside her. Talk to me. What's going on in that head of yours? I sat, pulling my knees up to my chest. He wants me to move into an apartment he owns. I know. Marco told me the whole story. Jessica's expression was unusually serious. He also told me what Ryan did to your place, and that you've been hiding out here for 3 days instead of accepting help. It's not that simple. Actually, it is. You're making it complicated because you're scared. I'm not scared. The lie felt transparent even as I said it. You're terrified, Jessica corrected gently. Terrified of owing someone. Terrified of being controlled again. Terrified that accepting help makes you weak. Am I close? I pressed my face against my knees, unable to answer. Listen to me, Haley. I've known you for 5 months. In that time, I've watched you work double shifts to pay rent, seen you skip meals to save money, heard you turn down every offer of help like it's poison. She paused. And I've also seen the way Alessandro looks at you. That man is not trying to control you. He's trying to help you. There's a difference. How can you be sure? Because controlling men don't ask permission. They don't respect boundaries. They don't hire expensive attorneys and then disappear for 3 days to give you space to think. Jessica took my hand. Ryan conditioned you to see kindness as manipulation. But not everyone is Ryan. Her words settled into the quiet spaces of my thoughts, finding cracks in my defenses. What if I accept, and he expects something in return? Then you leave. You have that power. You've always had it. Jessica squeezed my hand. But I don't think he will. And I think you're using that fear as an excuse not to let someone care about you. I wanted to argue, to defend my carefully constructed walls. But exhaustion had worn me down to something closer to honesty. I don't know how to do this, I whispered. I don't know how to accept help without feeling like I'm giving up pieces of myself. Maybe that's the point. Maybe accepting help isn't about giving up anything. Maybe it's about admitting you deserve to have people in your corner. We sat in silence for a while, Jessica's presence steady and grounding. Finally, she pulled out her phone and set it on the coffee table between us. Call him. Thank him properly for what he's done. And if you want to accept the apartment, accept it. If you don't, tell him no, and we'll figure something else out together. But stop torturing yourself by sitting here alone. She left the phone and let herself out, giving me privacy I hadn't asked for but desperately needed. I stared at the phone for 20 minutes before I picked it up. Alessandro answered on the second ring. Haley, just my name, but I could hear the question in it. Are you all right? No, I admitted, but I will be, I think. What do you need? The question was so simple, so open. Not what he thought I needed, not what he'd decided was best. Just asking. I need to accept your help, I said, the words coming easier than I'd expected. The apartment, the attorney, all of it. If the offer still stands, it does. His voice warmed perceptibly. When would you like to see the place? Now, if that's possible. I can't stay in this hotel anymore. I'm losing my mind. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He arrived in 8, looking like he'd run the whole way. His hair was slightly disheveled, his jacket unbuttoned, and there was actual relief in his expression when he saw me. You're sure about this? He asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. Something like respect flickered across his face. That's the bravest thing you could have said. The drive to Chelsea passed in comfortable silence. Alessandro didn't push me to talk, didn't ask questions, just let me exist in the quiet space of the car while the city rolled by outside. The building was beautiful in an understated way. Red brick with white trim, a small courtyard garden, security cameras discreet but visible. The lobby was clean and well-maintained without being ostentatious. 5th floor, Alessandro said, leading me to the elevator. Corner unit. It's been vacant for about 6 months. I had it cleaned and furnished last month. Just basic pieces, but you can add whatever you'd like. The apartment took my breath away. Hardwood floors, large windows that let in afternoon light, a kitchen with actual counter space, a bedroom that could fit more than just a bed. It was twice the size of my old place, 100 times nicer, and the rent would normally be completely beyond my means. The building has security, Alessandro was saying, walking me through the space. Cameras in the lobby and hallways, coded entry at the front door. The locks are new. I had them changed last week. You'll be the only one with a key. Last week, I repeated. You did this last week, before you knew if I'd accept. He had the grace to look slightly embarrassed. I wanted to be prepared if you said yes. That's incredibly presumptuous. Yes, he agreed. It is. I apologize. I walked to the windows, looking down at the street below. People hurried past, wrapped in scarves and winter coats, living their normal lives. From up here, the city looked manageable instead of overwhelming. Thank you, I said without turning around. For this. For the attorney. For showing up when I needed help. For respecting my space when I needed time. For all of it. I heard him move closer, stopping a careful distance behind me. You're welcome. For what it's worth, I don't do this lightly. Involving myself in someone's life. But something about you... He stopped, searching for words. You deserve to feel safe. Everyone does. But you especially. Why especially? Because you're still fighting. After everything he put you through, you're still standing. That takes strength most people don't have. I turned to face him. He was close enough that I could see the amber flecks in his dark eyes. The faint lines at the corners that suggested he didn't smile often, but sometimes did. I'm not as strong as you think I am. You're stronger. His voice was certain. Moving into this apartment doesn't make you weak or indebted or anything except smart. It makes you someone who recognizes when accepting help is the strategic choice. Strategic, I echoed, almost smiling. Is that what we're calling it? Would you prefer I call it what it is? Me wanting to make sure you're safe because the alternative is unacceptable? His expression turned serious. I sleep better knowing you're in a building with security cameras and working locks. Call it selfish if you want, but it's true. The admission hung between us, honest and vulnerable in a way I hadn't expected from him. I'll take it, I said. The apartment. For 6 months, like you offered. And I'll pay you back somehow, when this is all over. There's nothing to pay back. But if it makes you feel better to think of it as a loan, We can call it that. It does make me feel better. He nodded, understanding in his expression. Then it's a loan. Interest-free, due whenever you decide you're ready. The terms were ridiculous, the kind of loan no bank would ever offer, but I accepted them anyway because I needed the illusion of control even if we both knew it was exactly that. An illusion. When can I move in? Whenever you'd like. Today, if you want. I can have Michael help bring over whatever you need from your old apartment. The thought of going back to that destroyed space made my chest tighten. But I needed my things. The few possessions that mattered to me. Today would be good, I said, if it's not too much trouble. It's not. He pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. Michael will meet us there in 30 minutes. We'll get what you need, bring it back here, and you can start settling in. Just like that. Just like that, he confirmed. It seemed impossible that my life could shift so dramatically in the span of a single conversation. But when we left the apartment an hour later with Michael's help to retrieve my belongings, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Maybe Jessica was right. Maybe accepting help wasn't weakness. Maybe it was the first step toward building something that actually felt like home. 3 weeks in the Chelsea apartment had done something I hadn't expected. It had given me back my ability to sleep through the night. The building was quiet, in a way my old place never had been, insulated from street noise by good windows and actual insulation. My neighbors were professionals who nodded politely in the hallway, but respected boundaries. The security cameras in the lobby made me feel protected instead of watched. Jessica noticed the difference immediately when I showed up for my shift on a Wednesday morning. "You look human again," she said, adjusting the silverware on table 6. "Like, actually rested. It's weird seeing you without those dark circles. Turns out having working locks and heat that doesn't quit at 2 a.m. makes a difference." I finished folding napkins into the precise triangles Marco insisted on. "Who knew?" "I knew. I've been telling you for months that your old place was a dump." She paused, studying me more carefully. "He's still coming around?" She didn't need to specify who. Alessandro had maintained his pattern of dining at Celestino 4 times a week, always ordering the same dishes, always leaving before closing. But something had shifted in the past 3 weeks. He'd stopped by the apartment twice to check the security system, once to replace the smoke detector batteries I hadn't known needed replacing, another time to show me how to use the building's emergency protocols. Each visit had been brief, professional, respectful of my space. "He checks in," I said carefully. "Make sure everything's working properly." "Uh-huh." Jessica's expression suggested she knew there was more to the story than I was saying. "And you're okay with that? The checking in?" I thought about how to answer honestly. A month ago, the idea of anyone having that kind of access to my life would have sent me into a panic. Now, knowing Alessandro was paying attention to things like smoke detectors and door locks made me feel cared for in a way I wasn't ready to examine too closely. "I'm okay with it," I said finally. "He's not intrusive. He's just protective," Jessica finished. "The man is protective of you. And you're starting to like it." "I didn't say that. You didn't have to. It's all over your face." She grinned. "For what it's worth, I think it's good. You deserve someone who gives a damn." The dinner rush that night was particularly intense. A corporate party had booked half the dining room, and they wanted everything immediately and perfectly. I spent 3 hours running between the kitchen and tables, managing complaints about minor imperfections and soothing egos bruised by having to wait for their food. Alessandro arrived at 8, settling into his usual corner table with a book I couldn't see the title of. I brought him water without being asked, already anticipating his order. "Busy tonight," he observed, glancing at the corporate crowd that was getting progressively louder with each round of wine. "They're celebrating closing some deal. They'll be here until we kick them out." I pulled out my order pad. "The usual?" "Please." He closed his book, giving me his full attention in that way he had that made me feel like the only person in the room. "How's the apartment? Any issues?" "It's perfect, really. You don't need to keep checking. I'll decide what I need to check." There was no heat in the words, just statement of fact. The heat is adequate. The hot water pressure is good. Everything is more than adequate. It's the nicest place I've ever lived. I meant it as simple truth, but something in his expression softened at the admission. Good. That's good. I was about to head to the kitchen with his order when the sound reached us. Sharp, unmistakable. 3 cracks in rapid succession that made everyone in the restaurant freeze. Gunshots. Close. Too close. Alessandro was on his feet instantly, phone already to his ear. Michael. Status. He listened for 3 seconds. Lock it down. Send everyone home now. Yes, including the kitchen. Marco appeared from the back, his face pale. Was that what I think it was? 3 blocks south. Alessandro's voice was absolutely controlled, but I could see tension in the line of his shoulders. Close the restaurant. Send your staff home with security escorts. No one walks alone tonight. You can't just... Marco started, then seemed to remember who he was talking to. Yes, sir. Right away. The restaurant dissolved into organized chaos. Staff members grabbed coats and bags, while Alessandro made rapid calls arranging transportation. The corporate party sobered up fast, calling their own cars with shaking hands. Within 20 minutes, Celestino was empty except for Marco, Alessandro, Jessica, and me. Jessica. Alessandro turned to my friend. Michael is outside with a car. He'll take you wherever you need to go. I can take the subway. Michael will take you. It wasn't a request. Jessica met my eyes, saw something in my expression, and nodded. Thanks. Haley, I'll call you tomorrow. She squeezed my arm on her way out, leaving me alone with Alessandro and Marco. I'll lock up, Marco said. You two should go. I followed Alessandro out the back entrance where his car waited, engine running. The driver I didn't recognize held the door open, his expression carefully neutral. Alessandro gestured for me to get in first, then slid in beside me. The car pulled away from the curb smoothly, but I could feel the tension radiating from Alessandro like heat from a furnace. His jaw was tight, his hands clenched into fists on his thighs. In the dim light from passing street lamps, I noticed something dark spreading slowly across his left sleeve. You're bleeding, I said, the words coming out sharper than intended. It's nothing. Let me see. I reached for his arm, and he pulled away slightly. Haley, it's just a graze. I've had worse. The casual way he said it made my blood run cold. A graze from what? Those gunshots? I was closer than I should have been. It's already stopped bleeding. I'll clean it when I get home. Or you could let me clean it at my apartment since we're going there anyway. I kept my voice level, but my hands were shaking. You said I needed an escort home. Fine. But you're going to let me look at that wound. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. If it will make you feel better, it will. The rest of the drive passed in heavy silence. When we reached my building, Alessandro dismissed his driver with instructions to return in an hour. I led him upstairs, hyper-aware of his presence behind me, of the way he moved with careful precision that suggested pain he was hiding. Inside the apartment, I pointed to the bathroom. Sit on the edge of the tub. I'll get supplies. He obeyed without argument, which told me the injury was worse than he wanted to admit. I found the first aid kit he'd insisted on stocking in my bathroom cabinet weeks ago, and returned to find him carefully peeling off his jacket and rolling up his shirt sleeve. The wound was a deep gash across his upper arm, still oozing blood. Not life-threatening, but definitely more than a graze. This needs stitches, I said, opening the kit with trembling hands. It's fine. Just clean it and wrap it. Alessandro, I can't go to a hospital. Too many questions. His eyes met mine, and I saw something raw in them. Please, just do what you can. I wanted to argue, but the look on his face stopped me. Instead, I soaked gauze in antiseptic and began cleaning the wound as gently as I could. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, just sat perfectly still while I worked. What happened? I asked quietly. And don't tell me it was random violence. Those shots were too close to the restaurant to be coincidence. Alessandro was silent for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, do you really want to know? Once I tell you, you can't unknow it. I want to know. I pressed clean gauze against the wound, applying pressure. I think I deserve to know why someone shot at you close enough that I heard it. He took a breath, let it out slowly. There's a Russian organization that's been trying to expand into territory I control. Shipping routes, primarily. We've been negotiating, but talks broke down last week when they realized I wasn't going to concede the ports. Tonight was their way of sending a message. What kind of message? That they know about you. His voice went flat. They've been watching the restaurant. They know you work there. They know you live in a building I own. They're trying to figure out if you're valuable enough to me to be used as leverage. The gauze in my hands went still. Used as leverage for what? To make me give them what they want. Territory, money, concessions. They think if they threaten you, I'll fold. He looked up at me, his expression harder than I'd ever seen it. They're not entirely wrong. The implication settled over me like cold water. This is about me. They shot at you because of me. No. His hand caught mine, stopping my movements. They shot at me because they're desperate and stupid. You're not responsible for what they choose to do, but I am the reason you're a target. I've been a target my entire adult life, Haley. That's not new. What's new is having someone I care about potentially in their crosshairs. He released my hand, letting me go back to bandaging. Which is why I need to give you an option. My hands resumed their work automatically while my mind raced ahead. What kind of option? I have connections. People who can create new identities, relocate people safely. I can have you out of the city in 48 hours. New name, new job, new life somewhere they'll never find you. You'd be completely safe. The offer hung in the air between us, stark and final. He was giving me an escape route, a way out of the danger that came with knowing him. I should have been grateful. Should have been already planning what to pack. No, I said simply. Haley, no. I finished wrapping the bandage, securing it with careful precision. I'm not running again. I spent 6 months running from Ryan, and it didn't make me safe. It just made me alone. This is different. These people are dangerous, I know. You've made that clear. I stepped back, meeting his eyes. But here's what you don't seem to understand. I'm tired of running. I'm tired of letting fear make my decisions. And I'm tired of men telling me what's best for me without asking what I actually want. What do you want? His voice was quiet, intense. I want to stop feeling like my life is something that happens to me instead of something I choose. I wrapped my arms around myself, suddenly cold despite the bathroom's warmth. I want to feel like I matter to someone without it being about control or ownership. I want... The words caught in my throat. What I wanted was standing in front of me, wounded and worried, and offering me safety at the cost of everything else. I want to stay, I finished softly. Here. In this apartment, at my job, in this city. With you in it. Something shifted in Alessandro's expression. The careful control cracked, showing something raw and unguarded beneath. He stood slowly, favoring his injured arm, and moved close enough that I could feel the heat of him. You don't know what you're saying. You don't understand what being close to me means. Then explain it to me. I refused to step back, refused to let fear win again. Tell me exactly what it means so I can make an informed choice instead of one made out of panic. It means security escorts, limited freedom, always looking over your shoulder. It means people like the Russians will see you as a weapon to use against me. His jaw tightened. It means I'll do everything in my power to keep you safe. But there are no guarantees. No promises that nothing will ever happen. Life doesn't come with guarantees. My voice was steadier than I felt. Ryan taught me that. The difference is with you, I get to choose. You're not forcing me into anything. You're offering me options and respecting whatever I decide. You're right, I am. He lifted his uninjured hand, fingers hovering near my cheek without quite touching. But I need you to be absolutely certain. Because if you stay, if you choose this, I won't be able to let you go. The admission hung between us, heavy with meaning. This wasn't about protection anymore. This was about something neither of us had been willing to name until now. I'm certain, I whispered. His control finally snapped. The hand at my cheek moved to cup the back of my head, fingers tangling in my hair as he pulled me close. His mouth found mine with desperate precision, kissing me like I was oxygen and he'd been drowning. I kissed him back with equal desperation, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer despite his injury. All the tension of the past 3 weeks, all the careful distance we'd maintained, exploded into this single point of contact. He kissed like he did everything else, with absolute focus and intensity. His good arm wrapped around my waist, pressing me against him. I could feel his heart hammering against my chest, could taste coffee and something darker on his tongue. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his forehead rested against mine. "This is a terrible idea," he said, but he didn't let go. Probably. My hands were still twisted in his shirt. But I'm done making only safe choices. He pulled back enough to look at me, his eyes searching mine. "You're vulnerable right now. Scared. I won't take advantage of that." "You're not taking advantage. I'm choosing you." I met his gaze steadily. "There's a difference." "There is." His thumb traced my lower lip with heartbreaking gentleness. "Which is why I'm going to leave now. Before we do something you'll regret in the morning." "I won't regret it." "Maybe not." He pressed a kiss to my forehead, soft and achingly tender. "But I need you to be sure. I need you to choose me when you're not running from something else. Can you understand that?" I did, even though every nerve in my body was screaming for him to stay. He was giving me time, space, respect. Everything Ryan had never offered. "Go," I said, even though the word hurt. "But come back, please. Tomorrow." It was a promise. "We'll talk tomorrow. Really talk. About what this means, what you're choosing, all of it." He left, and I locked the door behind him with shaking hands. My lips still tingled from his kiss. My hands still remembered the feel of his shirt beneath my fingers. Every part of me wanted to chase after him, to pull him back, to finish what we'd started. But he was right. I needed to be sure, needed to choose him from a place of strength, not fear. Tomorrow, I would make that choice. Tonight, I would let myself feel the weight of it, the possibility and the danger and everything in between. Alessandro didn't come back the next day, or the day after that. By the third day, I'd stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes for messages that never arrived. By the fifth day, Jessica was giving me concerned looks every time she caught me staring at his empty table during dinner service. "He's avoiding you," she said on the 7th night, after we'd closed, and I was wiping down tables with more force than necessary. "And you're pretending you don't care." "I'm not pretending anything." I scrubbed at an imaginary stain. "He's busy. He has businesses to run. A life that doesn't revolve around me." "Right. And that's why Michael has been doing the security checks instead of him." I'd noticed. Michael had shown up twice in the past week to verify the building's systems, both times with polite efficiency and absolutely no explanation for Alessandro's absence. He'd been professional, thorough, and completely unwilling to answer any questions about his boss. "Maybe he changed his mind," I said, the words tasting bitter. "Maybe he realized getting involved with someone like me is more trouble than it's worth." Jessica stopped restocking napkins and turned to face me fully. "Or maybe he's scared. Did you consider that? Men like Alessandro don't get scared. Everyone gets scared, Haley. Especially when they care about something enough to lose it." She paused, studying my face. "You should talk to Michael. Really talk to him. I bet he knows more than he's letting on." I dismissed the idea at the time, but it stuck with me through the rest of the week. By Friday, when Michael showed up for another security check, I was ready. "We need to talk," I said, as he was preparing to leave my apartment. "And not about smoke detectors." Michael paused, his hand on the door handle. He was a big man, easily 6'3", with shoulders that suggested he'd been hired more for intimidation than conversation. But his eyes were kind beneath the professional mask. "About Alessandro," I continued when he didn't respond. "About why he's avoiding me. That's not my place to discuss, Ms. Cooper." I kissed him. He kissed me back. Then he disappeared. I think that makes it at least partially my place. I crossed my arms, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "Please, I need to understand what I did wrong." Something shifted in Michael's expression. He closed the door and moved back into the apartment, leaning against the counter with a sigh. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said finally. "Alessandro is protecting you. From himself. That doesn't make sense." "It does, if you know his history." Michael hesitated. clearly weighing how much to reveal. He had a sister, younger. Her name was Sophia. The past tense made my stomach clench. What happened to her? She fell in love with someone in the organization. Not Alessandro's operation, he wouldn't have allowed it, but a rival family. The man claimed he'd leave that life for her. Alessandro tried to stop it, but Sophia was stubborn. She thought love would be enough. Michael's jaw tightened. 4 years ago, there was a dispute over territory. Sophia was caught in crossfire at a restaurant. Wrong place, wrong time. She died in Alessandro's arms. The image hit me like a physical blow. I thought about Alessandro's careful control, his insistence on my safety, the way he'd offered me an escape route instead of asking me to stay. He swore after that he'd never put someone he cared about in danger again. Michael continued. Never let anyone close enough to be used as leverage. And then you showed up, and he couldn't help himself. He's been watching you for months, trying to convince himself to walk away, but he can't. And that terrifies him. So he's avoiding me because he cares about me? The irony was almost painful. He's avoiding you because last week's shooting made him realize you're already in danger just by knowing him. And he can't bear the thought of you ending up like Sophia. Michael straightened. That's why I'm telling you this, Ms. Cooper. If you're going to pursue this, you need to understand what you're asking him to overcome. It's not just about danger. It's about 4 years of grief and guilt. After Michael left, I sat on my couch for an hour, processing everything he'd told me. Alessandro wasn't avoiding me because he'd changed his mind. He was avoiding me because he was terrified of losing me the way he'd lost his sister. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to Michael. What's Alessandro's office address? The response came immediately, along with a warning. He won't be happy, I told you. I'll take that risk. The address led me to a building in the financial district, all glass and steel and the kind of anonymous corporate presence that didn't draw attention. I talked my way past building security by claiming I had a delivery, then took the elevator to the 15th floor. Alessandro's office was at the end of a quiet hallway. Through the frosted glass door, I could see his silhouette at a desk, phone pressed to his ear. I knocked before I could lose my nerve. The conversation stopped mid-sentence. I'll call you back, he said, and moments later the door opened. He looked exhausted. Shadows under his eyes suggested he'd been sleeping as poorly as I had. His shirt was wrinkled, tie loosened, and there was coffee staining his cuff. When he saw me, something like pain flashed across his face. Haley, what are you doing here? Michael told me about Sophia. I pushed past him into the office before he could close the door. About what happened to her. About why you've been avoiding me. Alessandro's expression closed off immediately. Michael had no right. He had every right. Someone needed to tell me the truth instead of letting me think you'd just decided I wasn't worth the trouble. I turned to face him. Anger and hurt and understanding all tangled together. You can't protect me from everything, Alessandro. And you can't make my choices for me. I watched my sister die because she chose to be with someone in this life, he said, his voice raw. I held her while she bled out on a restaurant floor. Do you understand what that means? What it did to me? I understand that it was tragic and unfair, and not your fault. I took a step closer, but I'm not Sophia. And you're not the person who killed her. You can't punish yourself forever for something you couldn't control. I can keep you safe by staying away from you. No, you can't. The Russians already know about me. They already see me as leverage. Staying away won't change that. It'll just make me face it alone instead of with you. I moved closer still, until I was near enough to see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. I'm choosing this, Alessandro. Knowing the risks, understanding the danger, fully aware of what happened to your sister, I'm choosing you anyway. His control was fracturing. I could see it in the tension of his shoulders, the way his hands clenched at his sides. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. Tell me exactly what I'm asking for so I can prove I understand. You're asking me to let you into a world where violence is currency and loyalty is survival. You're asking me to care about you knowing that caring makes you a target. You're asking me to trust that I can keep you safe when I couldn't keep my own sister safe. His voice cracked on the last word. I can't lose someone else. I can't. You won't. I closed the final distance between us, placing my hands on his chest, where I could feel his heart racing. Because I'm not going anywhere. Not because you're protecting me, but because I'm strong enough to stand beside you. There's a difference. For a long moment, we stood frozen, his eyes searching mine for certainty. Then something in him broke. His arms came around me, pulling me close with desperate intensity. I can't stay away from you, he said against my hair. I've tried. These past 7 days have been torture. Then stop trying. I pulled back enough to look at him. Stop protecting me from yourself and let me in. Really in. All the way. His mouth found mine in answer, the kiss deeper and more certain than the one we'd shared in my bathroom. This wasn't desperation or fear. This was choice. His hands framed my face like I was something precious, and I kissed him back with everything I had. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. No more avoiding, he said. No more pretending I can walk away. But you need to promise me something. What? If it gets too dangerous, if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments, no hesitation. You trust me enough to do that. I promise. The words came easier than I'd expected because I understood what he was really asking. Not for obedience, but for the assurance that I valued my own life enough to protect it. Then we're doing this. He pulled back, his expression still serious but lighter somehow. Really doing this. You and me. You and me, I agreed. And for the first time in a week, I felt like I could breathe properly. The next 2 weeks were a revelation. Alessandro stopped treating me like something fragile that might shatter under pressure. We fell into a rhythm of dinners at my apartment, conversations that lasted until 2 a.m, stolen kisses in the back hallway of Celestino when he thought no one was watching. He told me about his childhood in Italy, about his parents who'd built the organization from nothing, about Sophia's laugh and her terrible taste in music. I told him about my parents, dead in a car accident when I was 19. About the student loans I'd taken to put myself through culinary school. About the dreams of being a chef that Ryan had systematically crushed. About the shame of staying as long as I had with someone who hurt me. Shame is a weapon abusers use, Alessandro said one night, his fingers tracing patterns on my arm as we lay on my couch. It keeps you silent, keeps you from seeking help. You survived him. That's not shameful. That's strength. Jessica noticed the change immediately. She pulled me aside during a slow lunch service, her expression caught between happiness and concern. You two are together now, she said. It wasn't a question. Yes. Good. He's been different these past 2 weeks. Lighter. I didn't think Alessandro Ferraro knew how to be light. She paused. Just promise me you're being careful. Not just physically. Emotionally. I promise. Because I see the way you look at him, girl. And I see the way he looks at you. This isn't some casual thing. This is real. She was right. What Alessandro and I had was terrifyingly real, built on honesty and trust, and the kind of vulnerability neither of us had offered anyone else. It should have scared me. Instead, it felt like the first genuine thing I'd had in years. The charity event was Alessandro's idea. A small fundraiser for a children's hospital, he explained. Low-key, minimal publicity, just local business people supporting a good cause. I could wear something comfortable, meet a few of his associates, leave whenever I wanted. I borrowed a wine-colored dress from Jessica, simple and elegant without being flashy. Alessandro picked me up in his car, and the approval in his eyes when he saw me made me feel beautiful in a way I hadn't felt in years. The event was exactly what he'd promised, understated and genuine. I met his business partners, shook hands with people whose names I recognized from news articles, drank champagne that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. Alessandro kept his hand at the small of my back, a constant warm presence that made navigating the unfamiliar social territory bearable. We were leaving when someone asked for a photo. Just a quick picture for the hospital's website, the organizer explained. Alessandro looked at me, silently asking permission. I nodded. The photo was innocent, his arm around my waist, both of us smiling at the camera, nothing scandalous or newsworthy. I forgot about it the moment it was taken. 3 days later, it was everywhere. Someone had posted it to social media with a caption identifying Alessandro by name. From there, it spread, shared, commented on, dissected by people who had opinions about who Alessandro Ferraro spent time with and why. I was working a dinner shift when Michael appeared, his expression grim. He spoke quietly to Alessandro, who'd been dining alone at his usual table. I watched Alessandro's face harden, watched him pull out his phone and scroll through something that made his jaw clench. He stood abruptly and crossed to where I was refilling water glasses. "We need to go. Right now. I'm in the middle of my shift. Marco will understand. Michael, bring the car around to the back entrance." His hand found mine, squeezing once. "Please, Haley. Trust me." The urgency in his voice cut through my confusion. I followed him to the back, calling an apology to Jessica as we passed. She waved me on, her expression worried but understanding. In the car, Alessandro finally showed me his phone, the photo from the charity event, reposted dozens of times with increasingly speculative captions. But that wasn't what made my blood run cold. It was the message he'd received an hour ago. A photo of me leaving Celestino that morning, edited to show a red laser sight centered on my back. "The Russians," I whispered. "They're escalating, making it clear they know exactly where to find you." His voice was controlled, but I could hear the fury beneath it. "I'm pulling you from the restaurant effective immediately. You're not to go anywhere without security. Anywhere at all. For how long? Until I eliminate the threat." He met my eyes. "I know you want autonomy. I know you hate feeling controlled. But this is non-negotiable. Your safety comes first." I wanted to argue, wanted to insist I could still live my life despite their threats. But the image of that laser sight kept flashing through my mind. "Okay," I said quietly. "What do you need me to do?" Relief washed over his features. "Stay at the apartment. Michael will be stationed in the building. Jessica can visit, but only after being cleared by security. I'm handling the Russian problem personally." "How?" His expression went cold. "You don't want to know." He was probably right. But as we drove through the city toward my apartment, past people living normal lives without death threats and organized crime, I wondered what exactly I'd chosen. Not just Alessandro, but everything that came with him. When we reached the building, Alessandro walked me up himself. At my door, he pulled me close, holding me like he was afraid to let go. "This will be over soon," he promised, "and then we can have something that looks like normal." "I don't think we're built for normal," I said, but I held him just as tightly. After he left, I called Jessica. She answered on the first ring. "I heard what happened," she said immediately. "Marco told everyone. Are you okay?" "I'm safe. Scared, but safe." I sank onto the couch, exhaustion catching up with me. "Jessica, I don't know if I can do this. Living in fear, having security escorts, knowing there are people who want to hurt me just because of who I care about. Then you know how he feels every single day," she said gently. "Welcome to loving someone whose life comes with complications." The word hung between us. Love. I hadn't said it yet, hadn't let myself think it. But Jessica was right. This was what love looked like in Alessandro's world. Fierce and protective and terrifying. "I'll come by tomorrow," Jessica promised. "Bring food and terrible movies. We'll get through this." After we hung up, I sat alone in my apartment, doors locked and security systems armed, and thought about choices. I'd chosen Alessandro knowing the risks. Now I had to prove I was strong enough to live with those consequences. 4 days of protective custody had taught me several things about myself. First, I was terrible at sitting still. Second, daytime television was designed to slowly erode human intelligence. Third, I missed Alessandro with an intensity that surprised me, even though he called twice daily and visited every evening after handling what he vaguely referred to as negotiations. I was pacing the apartment for the 100th time that Thursday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a text from Jessica's number. Relief flooded through me. She'd said she'd try to visit today if security cleared it. But the message made my stomach drop. "Haley, I need you. I'm at your old apartment. Ryan showed up. I'm scared. Please come. Can't talk. He might hear." My fingers flew across the screen trying to call her back. The number rang once, then went to an automated message saying the line was disconnected. I tried again with the same result. "Ryan. At my old apartment." with Jessica trapped there somehow. My mind raced through scenarios. None of them good. Jessica must have gone to retrieve something I'd left behind. And Ryan had been waiting. He knew we were friends. He'd use her to get to me. I grabbed my coat and keys, my hands shaking so badly I dropped them twice. The security guard Michael had stationed in the building lobby, a quiet man named David, stood as I rushed toward the exit. "Ms. Cooper, you're not supposed to leave without— My friend is in trouble. She's with my ex. He's dangerous." The words tumbled out in a rush. "I have to help her." David's hand moved to his phone. "Let me call Michael first. We can send someone." "There's no time. She texted 5 minutes ago. If Ryan realizes she contacted me—" I didn't finish the sentence. Couldn't articulate the worst-case scenarios spinning through my mind. "Ms. Cooper, my orders are clear. You don't leave this building without proper security escort." "Then come with me." I was already pushing past him toward the door. "But I'm going whether you follow or not." He reached for my arm, but I was faster, fueled by panic and the desperate need to help Jessica the way she'd helped me. I burst through the front entrance and into the street, already scanning for a taxi. The hand that grabbed my other arm was too strong, too practiced. Before I could scream, something pressed against my mouth. Cloth. Chemical sweet. The world tilted sideways as I tried to fight, tried to remember the self-defense moves I'd never actually practiced. But my limbs weren't responding properly, and the street was spinning. And then everything went dark. I woke to the smell of rust and motor oil. My head pounded with a rhythm that matched my heartbeat, and when I tried to move, I discovered my hands were bound behind me with something that cut into my wrists. Zip ties, I realized distantly. My ankles were similarly secured. The space around me slowly came into focus. A warehouse. Mostly empty, except for a few scattered crates and industrial equipment that looked decades old. Sunlight filtered through grimy windows set high in the walls, creating bars of light across the concrete floor. 3 men stood several feet away, speaking in Russian too rapid for me to follow even if I'd understood the language. Terror locked my throat. This wasn't Ryan. This was so much worse. One of the men noticed I was awake and said something to his companions. They turned as a unit, and the one in the middle, tall, pale, with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, approached with deliberate slowness. "Ms. Cooper." "Welcome." His English was heavily accented but clear. "I apologize for the method of invitation, but you have been difficult to reach. Where's Jessica?" My voice came out hoarse. "Where's my friend?" Confusion flickered across his face, then understanding. He laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "Your friend is fine. Safe at work, I imagine. We borrowed her phone number. Clever technology, yes? You thought you were rescuing her, but she never needed rescue. The betrayal of it hit harder than it should have. Of course it had been a trap. Of course I'd been stupid enough to fall for it. What do you want?" I asked, though I already knew. "We want Alessandro Ferraro to understand that his stubbornness has consequences." The man crouched in front of me, close enough that I could smell tobacco on his breath. He refuses to negotiate fairly. So now we negotiate with what he values. You are valuable to him, yes? I wanted to lie. To claim Alessandro meant nothing to me. That kidnapping me would accomplish nothing. But the Russians had done their research. They'd seen the photo, tracked the pattern of his protection, understood exactly how valuable I was. "He'll kill you for this," I said instead, putting every ounce of certainty I possessed into the words. "Perhaps. But first, he will pay. $5 million and control of the southern port. A small price for something he loves." The man stood, pulling out a phone. "We will send him proof you are alive. You will tell him to cooperate." "Yes?" He held the phone in front of me, camera recording. I stared into the lens, knowing Alessandro would see this, knowing it would destroy him the way Sophia's death had. "Don't pay them," I said clearly. "Don't give them anything. I'm not worth—" The backhand came fast enough that I tasted blood before I felt the pain. My head snapped to the side, stars exploding across my vision. "Try again," the Russian said calmly. "This time, ask him nicely to pay." I spit blood onto the concrete and met the camera's eye once more. "I love you," I said. Because if this was the last message Alessandro received from me, that needed to be in it. I'm sorry. The phone disappeared. The Russians moved to the far side of the warehouse, speaking in low tones. I tested the zip ties systematically, looking for any weakness, any way to slip free. But they'd done this before, and whoever had secured my bonds knew exactly how tight to make them. Time passed strangely in the warehouse. Could have been an hour, could have been 3. The sunlight shifted across the floor, tracking the afternoon's progress. I thought about Alessandro receiving that video, about the expression on his face when he saw me bound and bleeding, about Michael and Jessica and everyone who'd told me to be careful, to stay put, to trust that I was protected. I'd been so arrogant, thinking I could handle this world, thinking love and determination were enough to survive the kind of danger Alessandro lived with daily. The sound of an engine outside made all 3 Russians tense. The leader barked orders, and the other 2 pulled weapons from their jackets. Guns, matte black and professional. They took positions near the warehouse's main entrance, a massive rolling door that looked like it hadn't moved in years. "Your hero arrives," the leader said to me. Right on schedule. So predictable. These men in love. The door began to rise with a mechanical screech that set my teeth on edge. A figure stood silhouetted in the opening. Alessandro, alone, carrying a black duffel bag that presumably held $5 million in cash. "Don't come in!" I shouted, my voice cracking. "It's a trap!" He came in anyway, because of course he did. His eyes found me immediately, and I watched something in his expression fracture at seeing me tied and injured. But his voice when he spoke was absolutely controlled. "I have what you asked for. Let her go. First, we verify the money." The Russian leader gestured to one of his men, who advanced toward Alessandro with weapon drawn. Everything happened at once. Glass shattered from above as figures dropped through the high windows on repelling lines. Michael's voice shouted, "Down!" and Alessandro dove toward me while gunfire erupted from multiple directions. The warehouse transformed into chaos, shouting in Russian and English, the sharp crack of weapons, the smell of cordant burning in my nose. Alessandro's body covered mine, his weight pressing me flat against the concrete as bullets whined overhead. I felt rather than heard his sharp intake of breath, felt wetness spreading across his shoulder where it pressed against my cheek. "Stay down," he said through gritted teeth. "Don't move." The firefight lasted maybe 90 seconds, though it felt like hours. When silence finally fell, my ears were ringing, and my heart was trying to hammer through my ribcage. Alessandro rolled off me carefully, his face pale but determined. His shoulder was bleeding through his shirt, the wound spreading crimson across gray fabric. "You're hurt," I said stupidly, as if that wasn't obvious. "I'm fine." He pulled a knife from his pocket and began cutting through the zip ties with shaking hands. "Are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm okay. Scared, but okay." The ties fell away, and I could finally move my hands, could reach up to touch his face and confirm he was real. "You shouldn't have come alone. You shouldn't have risked." There was never a question of risk. His hands framed my face with heartbreaking gentleness. "You're mine to protect. That doesn't have conditions." Michael appeared, checking the Russians who lay motionless across the warehouse floor. His team, 4 others I didn't recognize, were already moving through the space with tactical efficiency, securing weapons and checking for additional threats. "Clean," Michael called out. "Warehouse is secure. We need to move before police arrive." Alessandro helped me to my feet, his injured arm hanging awkwardly at his side. I pressed my hand against his wound, trying to slow the bleeding. He didn't flinch, just kept his good arm around my waist as we made our way to the waiting vehicles. The ride to the hospital passed in a blur of sirens, and Michael's calm voice on the phone coordinating with what sounded like law enforcement. Alessandro kept his eyes on me the entire time, his thumb tracing circles on my wrist like he needed the physical confirmation I was alive. "I'm so sorry," I said for the 10th time. "I thought Jessica was in danger. I didn't think. You thought like someone who loves her friends and wants to protect them. That's not wrong." His voice was rough with pain and something deeper. "But we're going to have serious conversations about security protocols after this. After you get treated for the bullet wound you took because of me. I'd take 100 bullets if it meant keeping you safe." He said it like it was simple fact, not dramatic declaration. That's what this means, Haley. Loving someone in this world. It means being willing to bleed for them. The hospital staff recognized Alessandro immediately and rushed him into treatment with efficiency that suggested they'd done this before. I refused to leave his side, holding his hand through the process of cleaning and stitching the wound. The bullet had gone clean through the fleshy part of his shoulder. Painful, but not life-threatening, the doctor assured us. When we were finally alone in the private room they'd given him, Alessandro pulled me onto the bed beside him with his good arm. "I need to ask you something," he said, his voice serious despite the pain medication making his words slightly fuzzy. "And I need you to really think before you answer. Okay, move in with me. Not the Chelsea apartment. My home. Permanently. Not because of security or protection or any practical reason." He took a breath. "Because I love you. Because I want to wake up next to you every morning and know you're safe and mine. Because I'm done pretending this is temporary." Tears I'd been holding back since the warehouse finally broke free. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me. Is that a yes?" "Yes." I kissed him gently, careful of his injuries. "Yes to all of it. Your home, your life, your impossible, dangerous, beautiful world. I choose you, Alessandro. Completely." His smile transformed his face, making him look younger than I'd ever seen him. "We'll figure out how to balance this. Your independence, my need to protect you. We'll find a way to make it work." "I know we will." 3 months later, I stood in Celestino's kitchen beside Jessica, reviewing the menu changes we'd implemented since Marco had promoted us to co-managers. The restaurant had thrived under our joint leadership, and I'd finally achieved the dream I'd thought Ryan had killed, being a real chef, creating dishes that people traveled across the city to taste. "The reservation book is full for the next 2 months, Jessica said, scrolling through her tablet. "We might need to hire another sous chef if this keeps up." "Good problems to have." I glanced at the engagement ring Alessandro had given me 2 weeks ago. Simple, elegant, exactly what I would have chosen. The wedding was planned for April, just a small ceremony with people who mattered. My phone buzzed with a text from Alessandro. "FBI raid went perfectly. Russian operation completely dismantled. You're safe now. Really, truly safe." It had taken months of careful evidence gathering, of Alessandro working with federal authorities to document everything the Russians had done. The kidnapping had given them all the justification they needed to move aggressively. Every member of the organization was now facing charges that would keep them locked away for decades. And Ryan had been arrested last month for conspiracy, fraud, and a dozen other charges after Alessandro had provided recordings of his dealings with the loan sharks who'd cooperated with authorities in exchange for reduced sentences. He'd be in prison for the next 10 years, minimum. "You okay?" Jessica asked, noticing my distraction. "I'm perfect." And I meant it. For the first time in my adult life, I felt genuinely safe, genuinely loved, genuinely certain of my choices. That evening, Alessandro picked me up from work in his car. The drive to his home, our home now, took us through Manhattan as the sun set, painting the buildings in shades of copper and gold. He reached across to take my hand, lacing our fingers together. "Have I told you today that I love you?" "Only twice." "You're slacking." "I love you." He kissed my knuckles. "I love your stubbornness and your courage, and the way you refuse to let me make decisions for you. I love you too. Even though you're overprotective and controlling and sometimes impossible." "Only sometimes?" I laughed, and it felt like freedom. This life we were building together wasn't perfect or safe or anything like normal, but it was ours, chosen with full knowledge and open eyes, built on trust and honesty, and the kind of love that could survive bullets and betrayal and everything in between. "Only sometimes," I confirmed, and kissed him as the city lights came alive around us, promising tomorrow and all the tomorrows after that.